Okay, so my sleep schedule's out of whack.
Okay.
So I really just woke. But I'm so confused
I
by
appreciate you being
everything.
here.
I am so confused by everything that's been happening with this channel so far in the 10 minutes I've been like conscious.
Wait, with my channel?
Yes. Yeah.
Why?
Okay, so first and foremost. No. So Alita asked me 2 days ago, do you want to come on tomorrow? But she asked me before I was awake and then said, oh no, wait, not tomorrow. It's not tomorrow. It's gonna be the next. I was like, yes. Now I never say yes to her. I always say probably, almost definitely. Like I'm almost.
There's a strong chance.
Yeah, there's a really strong chance. And she'll always send me a link. And this time I got like no link at all. And I was like,
no, I sent you the link first this time.
Right. And I had no idea. So that's why, like I'm saying, that was first and foremost. And meanwhile, I'm trying to catch your conversation here. And both of you gentlemen are saying that Kyle Rittenhouse doesn't have defamation. And I'm like, what are you talking about? How does he not have defamation? That's why I say I'm so confused. Now, I actually think he has more of your law school type of defamation than actual damages. That's a very different thing. But what I'm saying is, on a law school exam, he has defamation. And it's defamation per se. I don't even know how you say that being called a murderer isn't defamatory. As far as his damages, that's a different thing. That's when you're calculating his damages, he might get nominal damages. So that's why I say on a law school test, sure, hell yeah, he checks off all the boxes that this is an untrue statement, which is harmful and derogatory without any context, meaning it's defamatory per se, and i.e., it is therefore on a law school test. This is, perfect defamation. As far as damages, well, then you can say, well, how harmful is it to him? This is a kid who's been called a murderer 4 billion times in his life. So I think it's defamatory per se. I think he wins. I think it's very possible that damages he's awarded are literally $1. Like they'll be like, you're wasting everyone's time with this, so we'll give you $1.
Joe, I'm not sure how many defamation cases that you've done in the past, and I think the problem is that it's like you're doing part of the analysis and forgetting about there's a second part of the analysis you also have to do. So you're right? On a law school exam, they'll say, okay, does this person have a viable defamation claim? So first thing you've done is you've gone through the elements, right? 1, 2, 3. False statement published to a third party about the plaintiff, right? That's your first 3 elements for defamation per se. But then there's a second part of the analysis that you're missing, which is now the intent. If he wasn't a public figure, then you'd have a negligence element you'd have to overcome. But now, because you have the mental element, the negligence. But since he is a public figure, and this is a matter of public concern, we've all been talking about the actual malice element that he'd have to overcome. Now, there's nowhere in the United States where a public figure or something of public concern where you can go into a court and plead defamation, and if you don't plead actual malice, your case is dismissed. I can just call them right off. 1, Tucker Carlson. 2, Rachel Maddow. We can call them all off. So if you're right, I would give you probably an F, because I would say you've done part of the analysis, but you didn't complete the analysis by at least speaking to the actual malice standard. So you're right.
Well, I don't know about
respectfully, sir.
He would get credit for the element,
sir.
Maybe.
Whoa, no. Respectfully, sir, you are flat out wrong, because you're defining actual malice as if it means like get rooted in hatred, as opposed to reckless disregard for the truth. And anyone who shows any regard for the truth, anyone who's not being intentionally crazy in ignoring the truth, knows that he has been found not guilty, and that the term murderer, by definition, means that he actually has committed an act with the intent to kill unlawfully. So you're trying to nitpick and say, oh, well, there's how much of a difference is there between killer and murderer? Well, you know what? There's a legal definition, and the legal definition is murder is you're unlawfully killing someone. So even though there's an actual malice standard, and yes, I agree with you, that is part of the analysis, there is a completely reckless disregard for the truth, in that everyone knows that the statement murderer, if you look up what the term means, that he's not a murderer. So, and there is a difference between a killer and a murderer. And while in your heart you might feel like, well, how much does that matter? That's why the damages drop from being millions of dollars to being nominal. But as far as meeting that standard of actual malice, respectfully, Professor,
well,
who's giving me an F, I would argue back to you.
I'm giving you an F.
Yeah, I would argue back to you. What are you talking about? That is what actual malice is, when you're showing a reckless disregard for the truth, which is what Crank Uger, which technically his actual name is Cenk, not Crank, my friend. But I think Crank is a great nickname.
I call him Crank because I like to make fun of him. But
yeah, I know everyone calls him Chunk. Everyone calls him Chunk because that's also
Chunk.
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah. The problem is, Joe, with your analysis. So I'll explain it to you. See, the problem with your analysis is that it misses some of the nuances. It's the difference between kind of just like the I read it in a book versus the actual practice. So, and I would suggest, for instance, my last case was a defamation case, so I kind of had to deal with a little bit of this stuff. But regardless, if you read, I'll point you to two cases that you can read that will explain it out to you. The first one is obviously the Tucker Carlson lawsuit. The second one is the Rachel Maddow lawsuit. They said they made claims that were factually untrue. Fox News admitted in the Tucker Carlson case that the claims they made were defamation per se, were factually untrue. They called the Playboy Playmate an extortionist. And Fox News said, that's true. We lied about her. We said it was false. But when they got to the actual malice element and the intent element, there were two things that had to come up. Number one, the context of what they were talking about it. So since you're talking about it in the context of an opinion show, the court said, well, no reasonable person, based on what we have here, would believe that what he's saying is true. And on top of that, they said the actual malice was not actually satisfied in that case too. So then myself, Viva, we all call it the Rachel Maddow defense, the Tucker Carlson defense. So if that defense is true, that is essentially going to be the same for our boy Rittenhouse here, where even though they made these same claims on opinion shows and with the actual malice standard, there is no way that he can recover under the way the law is now. Now, if you're saying the Tucker Carlson case was decided wrongfully, if you're saying the Rachel Maddow case is decided wrongfully, where both sides admitted we said these things that were false, defamatory, instead of saying murderer, we said she's extortionist, and we know that was a lie. Unfortunately, they didn't recover. Matter of fact, they didn't even go to trial. They didn't even pass a motion to dismiss. So that's what we're talking about.
What you just said.
Joe, we're fighting again.
What you just said, though, was you're blurring two different things. Mm-hmm. Actual malice, it's not a matter of a lack of actual malice. It's a matter of a defense of opinion, not a statement of fact. And that everyone would take our words as a statement of opinion, which I agree with you. Mm-hmm. Statement of opinion is a valid defense. You're trying to say, oh, well, the reason he loses is because of lack of actual malice. And what I'm saying is that's not why he loses. If anything, he loses because they can successfully defend by saying anyone who hears us reasonably interprets our statement as being a statement of opinion, not a statement of fact. And ergo, we cannot be held liable. But that's not a statement saying that they didn't have actual malice. It's a matter of saying that they weren't making a statement of fact. And that, I agree with you, could be a successful defense. But
Tucker Carlson said particularly he was making a statement of fact. They said that in his lawsuit. Those were like the verbatim words. We can pull it up right now. They said he was making, and they said Rachel Maddow made a statement of fact, and they were dismissed for actual malice. So you may be right. Maybe all the federal judges are getting it wrong. But I'll just say this. In this case, these cases that line up. If you're telling me this case doesn't line up like Tucker Carlson, I would ask you, how is it not?
I will say there are parallels with Whoopi Goldberg in that, because she can definitely Kurt's he's going into his happy place right now.
Okay.
Hey Kurt, how's it going? So I would say that for Whoopi Goldberg, I think that she probably can use that defense, that Tucker Carlson / Rachel Maddow defense, because realistically, like, who's going to The View for factual analysis, right?
By the way, I agree.
Let's be real.
I agree that clearly a show called The View is almost by definition saying we are an opinion show. I mean, we're saying this is this is our view. That's what they're saying. They're saying this is our view. So by definition, they are an opinion show, not a fact show. So I agree with you that that's a pretty strong defense that they have, and that would make it very difficult for him to recover. I think that there's a difference between saying defending I'm saying it's opinion and which is what the Rachel Maddow defense is, and saying it's actual malice. Now I haven't read through the text of those decisions. So if you're telling me that even though it was really defensive opinion, the federal court labeled it as a lack of actual malice, which to me is not the same thing. So in that case, I would tell you, I don't really understand the rationale of the court going down that road. They should have just said, well, they're able, it's a statement of, you will never be able to prove, we're dismissing it because you can never prove that this was a statement of fact rather than a statement of opinion, or that because we recognize, or making a finding that we recognize that most people watching these shows recognize them not as a fact place, but as an opinion place. And ergo, by definition, you can never succeed. So we're going to dismiss this as a matter of law. But I'm confused why that would become actual malice rather than defensive opinion, which I do think that there's a difference.
You may be right. It may have been puddled, but because we should just pull up the case, because it essentially did say though these were factual. These were and again I hate just not hammering it, but Fox News admitted these were statements of fact and defamatory. And it didn't survive a motion to dismiss. So, I don't know what more you would need.
Man. Well, at least Chris's error, who's been a member for 4 months, says that he'll give you a C, Joe. He says, you're welcome. Oh, sorry. He said C-. Not even a C.
I'm not worried about being judged. I feel like I defended my position at more.
Yeah. More than Americanly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, no.
So.
Yeah. We're just playing around. So,
Oh yeah,
we're just joking around. Yeah, nobody's taking it seriously.
This is just fun, rigorous discussion.
Like no.
They all hate each other.